Namaskar, Dileep Singh Advocate, and you are most welcome to my channel Legal Outlook by Dileep Singh. We all know that insolvency and bankruptcy code, which was enacted in 2016, is a very important piece of legislation enacted by Modi government. And during this period of 3.5 years, it has been amended 3 times, and every amendments were very significant because it tried to fight the problem which the court and the companies were facing and people were facing. Recently, a 3 judges bench of comprising of Justice Rohinton Fali Nariman, Justice Joseph and Justice Naveen Sinha passed a very important judgment in which the constitutional validity of section 3, 4, 10 and 32A were upheld, and these all sections were amended in the Amendment Act of 2020. More than 50 writ petitions were filed challenging the constitutional validity of all these amendments, and the lead case in this matter all these petitions were of Manish Kumar versus Union of India, and the writ petition civil number was 26 of 2020. This case was decided on 19th January 2021, and the author of this judgment was Justice K.M. Joseph. The amendment which were incorporated in this IBC code related to the home buyers and builders were of very wider significance, because under the erstwhile arrangement and the system, even a single buyer or allottee could initiate the corporate insolvency resolution process against the property developer. But now the situation has significantly changed. Then what is the amendment related to home buyers and why it was challenged? This amendment says that for initiating resolution proceeding against corporate debtor, home buyers as the financial creditors must not be less than 100 or 10% of the total number of buyers. The allottee, these all allottees were coming together must be from a single project of the corporate debtor. It should not be that they should come from the different project of the same developer and form the number 100. The third important thing which was incorporated, that after this amendment, the deadline was given of 30 days for existing applicants who are pursuing their matters in different national company law tribunals to gather and to get the threshold number, the critical mass number of 100 allottees, and in all these matters which are pending in the tribunals. Otherwise, it would be deemed to be withdrawn. The main ground for challenging this amendment before Supreme Court was that Section 3 has imposed a very stringent condition on the right of individual financial creditor to initiate the corporate insolvency against the builder. The amendment was also criticized for being implemented retrospective. The third thing which was that the time period given is very less of 30 days. The Supreme Court upheld that upheld the constitutional validity of this amendment, and where this 100 home buyers have to come together and file the insolvency petition against the defaulting developer, and the constitutional validity was upheld. Then why Supreme Court found it reasonable that 100 or more home buyers need to approach NCLT for initiating insolvency proceeding? Then its answer lies in the fact that Supreme Court said that individual allottee has different remedies available under law, such as RERA or the Consumer Protection Act. And it said that the purpose of initiating resolution process is entirely different. So individual differences or individual problem or individual grudge should not be taken to initiate the insolvency proceeding. The second important point which was pointed out by Supreme Court, that there is a complete distinction between financial creditor and the operational creditor, and it is very important here. Supreme Court stated that there cannot be any doubt that a financial creditor and operational creditors are very distinct in nature, and it is not, this discrimination in the code is not a hostile discrimination which is forbidden under Article 14 of the Constitution of India. According to Supreme Court, the operational creditor is one whom money is due on account of goods or services supplied to the debtor, whereas in case of financial creditor, from where money is borrowed. So they both are on the different footing, and so the distinction given in the code is constitutionally correct. What I feel that court should have considered here, because what I understand, the fundamental difference given is not plausible from the commercial angle on which the company runs, because a person gives 100 rupees and other person gives services or goods of 100 rupees, but both are giving the same amount to the company, so their value should be on the same, because they both are important for running the company and for running the business. Anyway, the next important amendment which was challenged was Section 32A, which was inserted by this amendment, and this was also challenged on the ground that it violates the constitutional law. This new section grants immunity to the corporate debtors and its assets acquired from the proceeds of crime. It gives immunity from the criminal liability of erstwhile management. But all this immunity is available only after approval of a resolution plan. It was argued that this amendment would further jeopardize and further damage the interest of allottees or creditors. Section 32A provides immunity to corporate debtors and its property when there is a approval of resolution plan resulting in the change of management or of control of the corporate debtor. Then what were the arguments of the petitioner who challenged the amendment? The main argument of petitioners was that this amendment is put, and this Section 32A is inserted in the code under pressure from the real estate lobby. It was also argued that amendment is to just placate the vested interest of builder industry, real estate. But on this ground, the court was not very happy to entertain this ground, because this was an attempt to question the law of legislature based on malice. So the court did not entertain this argument. What the court says on this point, it is the purpose, it was this 32A is inserted for the purpose to give a fresh start. So it is desirable to distinguish the criminal liability of the corporate debtor. It is important that the new management must start from a clean slate. But it doesn't mean that the wrongdoers of earlier management or promoters were allowed to get away. They will remain liable for the acts which they have done criminally, but the corporate debtor will be debtor will be freed from that liability. While upholding the amendments, the court respected the separation of power, and something which is very good for our constitutional jurisprudence and particularly the parliament democracy, where there is a separation of power for all wings like judiciary, executive and parliament, legislature. So Supreme Court quoted a very good line which I would like to share with you here, that the boundaries of this court's jurisdiction are clear. The wisdom of legislature is not open to judicial review. A law is made by a body of elected representatives of the people. So quoting these lines, court very categorically said that on the ground of malice we cannot entertain anything. And ultimately the Supreme Court held the amendments are not violative to the right to equality under Article 14 of the Constitution. And in a very mild criticism to the manner in which it is enacted, and in very lighter vein, the court said the law came as a bolt from the blue. So it was surprising, the law was surprising, but ultimately the constitutional validity of these all amendments in IBC are upheld by the Supreme Court. So this was the news, this was the judgment of Supreme Court on these amendments. Thank you very much for being with me and watching this video. There is a special request to you that please share your views on the contents of the video so that I can improve myself with your observations and your comments. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. Thank you very much. Namaskar.